Hi, everyone. It's me, Nycci Nellis, and I've been covering the food, wine, and hospitality scene via print, online, TV, radio for the last 18 years. And as always, it is an incredible honor to be a part of Cuisine Solutions' annual blowout celebration. As many of you know, we are celebrating International Sous Vide Day because it's the birthday of the master of modern sous vide, Dr. Bruno Gussot. He's the creator of the technique that has revolutionized the food space. Now, during this day, it's a virtual party, and you've been able to watch cooking demos and fabulous panels with Michelin-starred chefs and well-known food professionals, all who utilize the technique in their kitchens. Now, I'm going to take us on a little bit of a turn here and talk about the business of restaurants. Behind the very sexy allure of your favorite restaurant is a business. And how did sous vide start in these very fancy Michelin restaurants and now wind up as a part of everyday restaurant scenes? So I'm very excited for this conversation. With me today are industry professionals and experts. I have Dan Rowe, who is CEO and founder of FranSmart. He specializes in finding the next big thing and growing it. Jon Taffer, I feel like he really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give him a little one. Producer, author, CEO, and you've probably seen him on TV yelling at somebody in Bar Rescue. Niren Chaudhary, he is the CEO of Panera. Again, another organization that I don't feel needs a ton of an introduction. But having said that, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And instead of me boring everyone reading your bios, I feel like you're better off introducing yourselves and telling your story and how you wound up in this great industry. Jon, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I went to college in University of Denver for political science. Thank God I didn't go into that business. And while I was in college, I got a job tending bar. And that was the first time I ever worked in a restaurant environment. And I've been in it ever since. I fell in love with the industry. So became a bartender, a general manager, became a regional vice president for a major steakhouse chain, managing several states, became food and beverage director and resident manager of what was then the largest resort in America, and opened up a bunch of my own restaurants and concepts across the country. And then about 10 years ago, I had the idea to create this television show, and I wanted it to be intelligence with takeaways and some industry data. And sure, it's got the emotion, but I wanted it to have some basis of intellect to it as well. And that's when Bar Rescue was launched. And a couple of years ago, I realized that the casual dining model, the traditional casual dining model, doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't work anymore. And the days of 6 and 8 people in a casual dining kitchen are over. And if we all think about it, 2 years ago, unemployment was so low that we as an industry were struggling to find employees in the first place. There were none out there. We had a crisis. We were looking at $15 minimum wages in many markets, which was horrifying, moving kitchen staff in some cases to $18, $20 an hour. So the model wasn't working. So I said to myself, gee, could I create the casual dining model of the future that is half the labor cost in the back of the house so I don't have to reduce it in the front of the house? And is this premise even possible? And could I create, using technologies like Cuisine Solutions, could I create the kitchen of the future? And could I reinvent completely food service top to bottom? That premise and that goal led me to Cuisine Solutions. And
I'm going to stop you there because we're going to get into that even deeper. But before I do, I want the other 2 people on the panel to be able to introduce themselves. Dan, let's start with you. Tell us what FranSmart is and what it does and how you're involved with it.
So I started off in the kitchen. So I was actually a cook and a dishwasher. And when I was 23, I bought a franchise of a bagel bakery, a full scratch bagel bakery. And it was a little 6-unit chain that didn't have a lot of systems or procedures, but they sold me a franchise and I was happy. And I helped grow that franchise from 6 stores to about 200. And then we sold the company. And one of my restaurants was right across the street from the first Chipotle, the very first Chipotle way back when. We tried to get involved with Chipotle. He wasn't interested. We got involved with a company that copycatted him called Qdoba. So Qdoba had one store open for just a couple of months. We started working with Qdoba instead. So I grew Qdoba from 1 to about 100 units. We had another 500 or so in development, and that company got sold to Jack in the Box. That really became my business and my model and my strategy, was to go find these emerging early stage great concepts that, you know, when concepts I thought could get to 500 or more units, go find them when there are only a couple, and really get the upside of that comes with young brands. And so in 2000, we started FranceSmart with the idea of, instead of growing one company at a time, we did it as a portfolio strategy. And we've had some misses and some big hits. Like we were the ones that launched Five Guys, the Five Guys franchising. So I've been doing that. We've sold about 5,000 franchises around the world. And that's our niche, is we're trying to find the next big thing as early as possible.
Well, I'm on board with you. I'd like to find the next big thing, like yesterday. So I'd like to hear more from you on that. But now let's go to Niren. Niren, when did you start at Panera? Because you haven't been there for more than 3 or 4 years, correct?
Yeah, just under 2 years at Panera, but I've had 30 years of food retail experience. 25 of that with Yum Brands, which is Pizza Hut, KFC, Taco Bell. I ran the Europe business for 10 years, ran India for 10 years, and my last job was to be the global president for KFC. After that, I joined JAB, which is an investment fund. And through them, I was the chief operating officer for Krispy Kreme, selling donuts all over the world. And then after that, I came to Panera Bread just under 2 years ago. So for the listeners who may not know Panera, Panera is about, as you mentioned, over 2,000 cafes, $6 billion of revenue. And we employ about 120,000 associates. I think what's common to me in terms of what I'm passionate about across all of these multiple brands, I'm attracted to brands that are leaders in their category. So KFC is the best fried chicken concept, Taco Bell for Mexican, and Panera, of course, in fast casual. And secondly, I'm also drawn to brands that believe in quality and doing things the hard way. So each one of these brands actually, cook every single day back in the back of the house, whether it's Panera or Krispy Kreme and the other brands. So those are my two sort of deeply ingrained values that attracts me to brands and concepts, is leadership and commitment to quality.
Well, I think that's really interesting, because that really delves into what we'll be talking about when we talk about cuisine solutions and the sous vide process and what it does for foods in all businesses. But I'd like to do a little rear view mirroring, looking in the back, and talk a little pre-pandemic. John, you made an excellent comment about the restaurant industry and how there wasn't enough people for it. There wasn't enough servers, there wasn't enough back of the house, and wasn't enough front of the house. We were in a bind. It was a national problem. What did you all see for your respective businesses? What was on the horizon for you? Dan, with all the different properties you were working for, I know you're always looking for the next best thing, but you still have to manage what you have. So what was it all about? Growth? Was it real estate? What were your focuses?
Our focus is a category, a concept that's in a category that could get to 500 or 800 units. Our brands have to have really good unit economics. So we tend to sell big multi-unit franchises to experienced groups, people that already know what they're doing. So in order for somebody to not keep building an established brand and to build ours, our economics have to be a lot better. So for us, a lot of it comes down to unit economics. There's a bunch of other things too, but the biggest thing I'm looking at is the concept I'm working with. Can that concept be 500 or 1,000 units? And are the economics strong enough that it'll attract franchisees that not only will open, but they're going to make enough profit that they want to keep reinvesting into more locations?
And how does that switch now that we're 10 months into a pandemic? Does that change your focus at all?
No, it's the same. So it's the same. And the way we've been looking for the last, forever, is we want to find concepts that do more volume and less square feet. more volume with fewer employees, right? And so even before COVID, like John was saying, you had a problem, you couldn't find employees. And if you can find them, you couldn't afford them. You know, like even today, they announced the $15 minimum wage. That soon will be the floor. That's not the minimum wage. That's the floor that we're going to start growing from. So concepts then, but more than ever right now, need to figure out how to do more volume with less employees. And so all the same things that have been issues are, are still issues. Frankly, I look at right now, I mean, I'm looking at what's going on right now. Our portfolio is fast casual for the most part. Our sales are fine across our portfolio. And as sad as COVID has been, and it's sad, there's a tremendous opportunity right now for somebody who's fresh, looking forward today to go find great sites, to go secure good people, and on and on and on.
Well, I think that's a good point, John. That sort of leads me to you, because you're there. You launched, I think during COVID, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But you have a plan in place. Did that change at all with the pandemic, or were you like, no, this is in my wheelhouse, this makes sense?
Well, it's interesting. We started with this premise of the kitchen of the future. Mm-hmm. So we had Cuisine Solutions as our food partner, and then we had another company, Middleby, as our technology partner, who produces about 65 brands of various type of kitchen equipment, who Cuisine works very, very closely with. So looking at the production technologies and the food technologies, we were creating kitchen of the future. COVID hits. We then realize, wow, our kitchen has less surface space, no raw product contact, right? No raw and cooked areas, less prep, not the grease trap intent. We have a COVID safer kitchen. And we realized that as a consequence of our commitment to sous vide and the way we've constructed our kitchen, we believe we had statistically an incredibly safe environment. So from that, we created the Taffer Safe Dining System and built a whole process of hand scanning equipment and all sorts of technologies around it. So we had the food technology COVID safe, the preparation COVID safe. We made it contactless, and then we added a few layers of PPE and other things to it. So we found that the decision of sous vide and the kitchen of the future and the untraditional approaches that we took were perfect with a COVID mentality. So we wound up there by coincidence, but that's where we wound up. So we did open, as you say, and we opened in October in the middle of COVID. We were supposed to open in July. It was a war. Millwork factories opened and closed. Glassware factories opened and closed. Wallpaper factories opened and closed. Products arrived for construction that were damaged in shipping because the shipping companies were overwhelmed. COVID was at every corner. No matter what you tried to do, from ordering glassware to getting wallpaper, was everywhere. So we opened in October. We've attained 200% of our anticipated COVID budgets. It's been a home run for us. Wow. And a lot of that has been that we made this decision to base so much around sous vide, which opened up efficiency opportunities for us, as well as sanitation and safety opportunities for us that we didn't expect.
Well, I would love to get into that in a little bit, but I want to just pop into Niren. Niren, in your other positions where you worked, I don't know if sous vide was really a part of their use, like if they used it. What now Panera, when you came in, was already had products that were sous vide. Was that new for you? Was it something that you thought, wow, I like this, or what were your thoughts on it?
Well, let me just share with you firstly where we were before the pandemic and what happened. I think because that's a very important question. So pre-pandemic, JAB had just acquired Panera. And as we all know, Panera was led by a very charismatic, highly successful founder, Ron Shaich, who's done a fantastic job. But in that moment of transition, there were a lot of, we were facing tremendous amount of headwinds on multiple fronts, as often is the case during transitions. And our task was transformation from successful past into a very successful future. And that transformation had two components that we were focused on: transform the business, keep the momentum going, and transform the culture and structure. So to be led by more an empowered team, not just a charismatic founder, to be focused on our cafe general managers and so on. And to have a structure which is flatter, less bureaucratic, and can move with speed. So we were on this transformation journey and feeling very confident when we got absolutely hammered by the pandemic suddenly. And for us, it was a big shock to our system. We lost half of our sales within 2 weeks. They disappeared because we were a fast casual concept. And we had almost 60% of our sales came from on-premise, in the cafes, etc. So we lost that overnight. And we then stepped back and embraced the pandemic with a mindset of how can we use this as a catalyst to become better and stronger? So can we actually use this to redefine ourselves as a brand, as a business model, as a team, as a culture, so we emerge much stronger from it? So as a result of that mindset, I'll share with you that pre and post pandemic, we were 40% off premise. We are now 85% off premise.
Wow.
We were 35% e-commerce. We are now 55% e-commerce. And so we have pivoted very, very rapidly towards an off-premise, e-commerce enabled enterprise, and also innovated very aggressively towards products where we saw tailwinds. So interestingly, during the pandemic, what consumers were eating a lot of? Donuts and hamburgers.
They want carbs.
And pizzas.
Carbs. Yes.
People are saying life is hard enough. Give me some good old indulgence, So we fast followed on that. We launched our own brand of pizza very recently, which is doing incredibly well. So innovation, off-premise, e-commerce is how we pivoted. And now we're emerging through the pandemic much stronger than we were going into it. And even in the second wave, we've been hit by less than 10% of our sales volumes versus the 50% that we had in the first phase. So we have actually become stronger because of the pandemic.
It's sort of one of those silver linings, right? Like an itty bitty silver lining, because I think for all of you, you could probably all speak to, business as usual when you don't have to change. Sometimes it's hard to pivot, but now everybody has had to, which has created new avenues, new revenue streams. I'd like to talk to Dan about sous vide. You found it early on. What was it about the process that appealed to you? What was the light bulb moment for you where you were like, oh, my people can use this?
Yeah. So I'm in the royalty business, right? I'm in the restaurant business or the franchise business. Franchisors care about making things easy for their franchisees and giving tools to franchisees to make it easy for their employees to do a great job. And everybody's standard is to do things 100% right 100% of the times. And so the more things from scratch, the more moving parts that you have, the harder that is. I saw sous vide. I've known Cuisine Solutions folks for about 20 years, and I've been bringing brands steadily to this concept saying, I don't understand why everybody's not doing this. And it's the idea, it's the perfect, how do you have more volume in less square feet? And how do you have more volume with fewer employees? How do you get food made twice as fast? How do you have, almost no safety issues and perfect consistency? And there's just on and on and on. And I never understood, especially with as hard as it's been to find employees, it's like you should be engineering a concept that needs less employees. And so I'm not a celebrity chef. I don't come from that side. I'm not a make everything from scratch for integrity's sake. I'm a process business, management. And again, I come from wanting to make it really easy for my franchisees to succeed, because if they do, they're going to open up more stores. They're going to be more enthusiastic about their sites. Employees, think about it, like an employee that's working in a restaurant, he wants to feel good about what he's doing. And so if you can make it easy for an employee to get their job done 100%, which is exactly what sous vide's done. So I like it. I continue to bring all of my brands here.
I'm just sort of curious, of the brands that you bring it to, what's the reticence?
So, a lot of people, it's new. Even though the technique's been around forever, it's new to them. It's a new idea. And a lot of times people there's a bit of they're like sheep, right? No one wants to be the first one, and then they're afraid to miss out. And so Several of my brands actually are on the down low. We don't talk about it, but several of my brands are customers of Cuisine Solutions. What happens though sometimes is if you get a restaurant, let's just say a full service Applebee's or something like that. If Applebee's were to go hire Cuisine Solutions to go make a product or two, that particular product will be easier, but by and large, the labor model is not going to change. And so part of the attraction with sous vide is if you have the whole menu coming from this source, then you really do have the offset with the labor, and it works. And so where I've actually brought people, they want to try it, they try it with one item, and that item makes sense, but then they look at that item's food cost outside of the context of what the total prime cost could be if they were doing it right. And it doesn't fit. But I think you're going to see that the trend line. I mean, 10 years ago, there was no Panera, there was no Starbucks, there was no major brands using sous vide. I think the trend line is going that in 10 years, I think everyone's going to be doing this.
Well, John, you and I talked about that. We talked about the initial cost, the sticker shock of using a sous vide product and then sort of making it work in the structure of the restaurant business, because I mean, we've all heard the term razor thin margins. It's a fact. It exists in the highest end of restaurants and even in the fast casual business, even though the turnover and the way the system works is a little different. So John, how did that work for you in creating your new concept?
You know, what's interesting for me, if I can just digress for a second, my background is a little unique because I've created literally hundreds of concepts. I create as a consulting company, hundreds from Hyatt hotels, inside Hilton hotels. So I'm a guy who designs 8 or 10 completely different types of kitchens every year. I'm a guy who does completely different types of menus every year. And everything that I do has to fall into traditional food costs, whether I'm creating an Italian concept for a client or I'm creating a nightclub concept for a client. I'm always bound by these traditional industry cost structures. And there is a tad of sticker shock with sous vide, and I've learned that. So you have to look at the entirety of the business. You know, I open my businesses to attain a certain food cost percentage, and it's a challenge with sous vide to hit that food cost percentage. But what's incredible about Cuisine Solutions is they should change their logo so Cuisine is small and Solutions is big. Because when I go to work with their team and their test kitchens and their chefs, which I've done now for a year and a half, we find solutions. Mm-hmm. And you know, you wouldn't think that you could make a sous vide chicken wing and think crispy and all of the qualities of a chicken wing sous vide, but we did. And you wouldn't think that you could do a sous vide pre-cooked burger. And it was a challenge for us because the first one or two we did in this Cuisine Solution kitchens didn't work out so well. So we had to change the blend and the makeup of the burger so it was perfect when cooked sous vide. But all of these things add to the cost. And look, we understand a head of lettuce raw has one cost. Once I get it sliced and put in a bag, it has another cost. We get that. And that 20% cost is an impact, but there's a labor savings. There's an energy savings. Sous vide products can last 2 to 3 times longer in a walk-in. So there's a waste factor. So there is an entirety that you need to look at. But if you isolate food costs, and you're right, then the food cost traditionally is going to come in a little higher than not. But look at the benefits you're receiving and the overall economics work well.
Well, but I'm curious, given all your restaurant work and bar work, how did sous vide come across your purview? Like, what was it that somebody grab you and say,
well,
hey,
I decided I wanted to create the concept of the future, and I was economically driven. Again, I'm a guy who creates every kind of concept you can imagine. Right. You know, I've created Cala-Parisian cuisines. You know, anything you can think of, I've done over the years. So I came at this to reinvent. I wanted to build a kitchen without a range. I wanted to build a kitchen without a hood, without a grease trap. I wanted to build a kitchen that had at least a 50% labor reduction and a significant build-out cost reduction. That's how I started. Okay. And I hoped I could do it without raw proteins. I hoped I could achieve certain things. In my quest of traveling around the country and sending my chefs to different companies, we wound up in the test kitchens of Cuisine Solutions. And I remember this, and Felipe will remember this when I looked at him and said to him there, Felipe, is it even possible that I could create an entire deep casual dining menu across all food categories, all sous vide. And he looked at me and said, yes.
Oh my God, he must have looked at you and been like, yes, hello, of course.
So that was my intention when we started. And when I started to create this whole premise, I reached out to my buddy, Dan Rowe, who I've known for 20 years. And I told Dan, and man, our heads just came together on this thing. Philippe was the third head in the mix. And you know, we completely redesigned the kitchen from get-go, systems, procedures. I have product that lasts 2 to 3 times longer in my walk-in. I don't have raw and cooked cutting boards. I don't have prep to the levels that I used to. Here's a key point. And I don't want to get ahead of this. When we talk post-pandemic, there's a factor I'd like to talk about a lot with regard to sous vide, but I'll wait till you get there. But my point is this: I wasn't looking for sous vide. I was looking for solutions. I was looking for cooking technology that would allow me to achieve this objective, and sous vide was it. So it was a result of quest, not being a fan of it. I became a fan of it.
But that's really interesting. Now, Niren, you know, you talked about Panera and its mission and why that spoke to you. How does sous vide fit in with the Panera mission?
Sure. I love John's passion, by the way. You know,
It's infectious.
it's deeply infectious. I love the way he talks about food and concepts, and would love to have a separate conversation with you.
Sure.
Would love to learn from you, John. I think it's amazing. So I think you asked the question around all my other brands. None of them, you know, thought about sous vide. You know, KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, etc. None of them. I come into Panera Bread and I recognize that we are serving sous vide, you know, turkey and sous vide beef, and I'm intrigued because I know here is the thing: Panera serves food that customers feel good about eating. That's our DNA. It's about taste, and it's also about feeling good about what you eat. And that promise is underpinned by the quality of our ingredients. All our ingredients are fresh, they're clean, no artificial preservatives, colors, etc., etc. All our animal proteins are raised responsibly, and we take that very seriously. When you apply those high filters on food values, sous vide is a phenomenal blend where it gives you the taste and the goodness of the quality that you're looking for in a way that is safe for your operators to operate in the kitchen. So I was intrigued by it because I think the end product, the quality of a sous vide process, is this higher amount of moisture. There's the flavor and the taste profile is superior, and it's a safer process for the employees. But here's the thing: I was in, you know, the first couple of months, and like John was saying, it's cuisine and solutions, you know, and mindset. So Felipe reaches out to me. He says, "Hey, Niren, I've heard you're new to Boston, new to the US, new to Panera. You might need some help." I said, "You bet." I mean, that's kind of understating it. I need tons of help. He said, "Don't worry. You know, I'm there, and I want to help you any which way I can." So I said, "I don't have even time to come and visit you." You know what this man does? He sits into a van, a kitchen, a mobile kitchen, with his top chefs and all of his products, sous vide products, etc., and drives to me in Needham, in Massachusetts. And he says, "Okay, so come into my kitchen. I brought my kitchen to you, and let me now share with you the range of things that we could be doing for you, and the reason why there's a convergence of values between doing food the right way, you know, which is what I found both in Felipe as a leader, as a human, and also his company. And that's the attraction for us to. So as a result of that, sous vide, those products, you know, Cuisine Solutions, one of our largest suppliers. But I do have to echo that one of the biggest barriers is cost. There's no question about it. And I think that is something that Cuisine Solutions need to continue to solve for, because I think one can kind of look at it holistically. But, you know, when we're looking at our razor thin margins impacted by the pandemic and all the pressures that we're facing, we have to find solutions that strengthen our business model, you know, and it's the magic of the and. You want this great taste, high quality, safe procedures, but good costs as well. And that, I think I'm looking forward to more sort of solutions from Cuisine Solutions on that front.
Well, I think you bring up, all of you have brought up incredible, issues, safety now more than ever. I think the layperson, the consumer would go into a restaurant and assume what you're doing in the back is safe. I mean, people who work in restaurants know there are regulations and different boards for this and all these health codes that you have to follow. But half of that has been elevated because of the pandemic. It's also keeping your staff safe. Not only do you want to keep the consumer safe, you want to keep your staff safe, and that's a priority too. So there's the safety is a huge issue, and then waste is another issue, and how we manage waste. Waste is a big issue because of global warming, and people are concerned about it. But then it's also cost associated with waste. So how does all this, the safety and waste and the cost, how does all this work hand in hand with what each of you are doing? Dan, you wanted to kick off? You're on mute. And now you're not.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We were supposed to be on mute, right?
Yes.
I mean, it really just comes down to the P&L, right? You look at your P&L and the net, the cost is higher, the labor is significantly lower, and the numbers work. And so the numbers work, and then you're also solving is like, what are the roles that employees hate doing? Like they hate cleaning, they hate being around raw food, and so there's a lot of reasons, not only financial, but frankly, I'm driven by the financials, and everything I've seen about a kitchen doing sous vide, it's a no-brainer why they wouldn't do it.
And John, for you, what is it? I mean, waste is very important. You talked about technology a little bit. I mean, food tech is exploding right now. I mean, there were so many apps for behind the house, in front of the house. I don't know how those are playing out right now, but what's happening for you with all that? I mean, you said you want to talk post-pandemic. Let's do it. What do you think is there?
Well, there's a word that has been a little absent from this conversation. I think it's important, and that's the word trust. And I opened it, and you guys will get a kick out of this. I sold franchises for Taffer's Tavern before the first restaurant was ever built. All I had was renderings and a hypothetical menu. And that first restaurant we're talking about in Atlanta is a franchise. So I have no corporate store. I didn't create a corporate store. I'm not going to do a corporate store. My first unit was franchise, and I have a celebrity brand with an audience of 91 million. I better darn well trust that product that I'm putting out. I better trust the spec, the consistency and flavor, trust that it's going to be cooked to the right temperature. I have to trust, especially in this franchise model with the first one, with a celebrity brand that has an asset value. And most restaurant companies with one restaurant don't have the asset value that I would have in brand. Terrifying premise. Sous vide, I could trust. I could trust the spec. I could trust the consistency. With the right cooking equipment and technologies, I could trust the outcome as far as temperature and juiciness and consistency. That trust is a very powerful asset when people like us are protecting brands like Panera, which again, iconic brand. Trust in product is so critical for both of us. And that was powerful for me when I'm leveraging a celebrity asset of this value around a food product. So that was powerful to me. Post-pandemic, I've done about 6 billion media impressions from this very room on the news channels. I was the first person to say on national television that restaurants will be at 50% capacity. I was the first person on national television to say that kitchens will look more like operating rooms and employees will be wearing PPEs. And news hosts told me I was crazy, and I was laughed at back in March and April when I said these things. Post-pandemic, here's where we're at. In the independent restaurant world, we're going to lose about 35 to 40% of our restaurants by the time this is all over. In the independent bar space, and it's a very negligible term, a restaurant with a bar with a restaurant. So it's a very negligible term. We're going to lose up to 80% of independent operations. Now, I believe come April, May, as people are getting vaccinated, there is a pent-up demand. I know sitting here in Las Vegas, my friends who run the huge casino companies are expecting a real change in curve April 1.
Mhm.
Let's assume for a moment that there is a pent-up demand. And let's assume that Panera's in-store statistics start to go back up to 50, 60, 70% again. And all this starts to happen and we have a market surge. That surge happens with approximately 30 less percent capacity of the industry.
Right.
Boom town like we've never seen before. That's what I predict for this summer and next year. Capacity down.
Boomtown for who? Boomtown
For the restaurant operator.
But like small little independent restaurants or the big guys?
I think across the board.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, I think we have pent up demand. I think we have a resurgence in the marketplace with a greatly reduced capacity of seating.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever capacity is reduced and volume is increased, the definition is boomtown. Mm-hmm. So there's spaces all across the country, great landlord opportunities. Landlords are not being as aggressive. We can be more aggressive as operators in negotiating these leases now, especially with great brands like Panera and even Taffer, et cetera. So I see great opportunities in the landlord space. I see tremendous market opportunities, but I caution people because this is coming back in waves, and restaurant operators are going to find the value equation is most important in the beginning. The experience equation starts to come back heavily in phase 2. And then the luxury equations and the upscale elements and the upsell elements start to come back into phase 3 of this migration back. But to answer your question, I see boomtown. Now, I want to bring this back to sous vide.
Okay.
In Taffer's Tavern, my longest ticket time is 6 minutes. Imagine boomtown. Imagine a downtown location. Imagine a 45-minute wait to get in for lunch, and my ticket time is half that of my competition. Not a bad deal.
No, not at all.
So if I can turn those tables, and when I was involved in Rainforest Cafe, we reduced table turns from 57 minutes to 44 minutes, and sales went up $8 million in one restaurant.
Wow.
So table turn minutes matter. And it's just one part of the equation of why we can use sous vide to benefit us in ways that might justify that food cost hit that we're taking to use it.
Well, I think that's interesting. Now, I'm curious, do you feel that there has to be a certain amount of training to the staff that comes in to execute sous vide so that the consistency remains in place?
Well, yes, but there's a lot of similarity between the cooking of each item. You know, they're going into combi ovens. It's the program of the oven that really is changing more than the technique of the cooking of the product. Our ovens are programmed online. The franchisee can't change the programming of the oven. Only we can. Uh-huh. So we can roll out a new product, reprogram the cooking process, and train within hours. So it really does dummy down training significantly. Because of the similarity of product. I mean, it comes out of sous vide package, it goes into one of the combis or one of the pieces of cooking equipment, which is pre-programmed, and it comes out flawlessly every time.
And Niren, I'm sort of curious, just thinking about what John has said, does that sort of change, like make you think about how you could be incorporating it more, or how things work at Panera?
Well, I think, Panera is, like I said, all about serving food that's good and also good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And because we were deeply impacted by the pandemic, and at this time, I think we have to be very mindful about our business model as we repair the business and take it forward. Mm-hmm. We faced, severe margin compression and so on. And I think the way in which we have recovered our margins are the following 3 ways. One, we have dramatically simplified our menu, down by almost 30-35%, and we have reduced our waste at the back of that. Second, I think we've become more focused on redefining the management deployment structure in our cafes and labor productivity targets. So we have optimized that. And the third big lever is just supply chain efficiencies, consolidation with partners and leveraging our volumes and buying more smartly. And all of those 3 things in combination, we've been maniacally focused on during the pandemic, waiting for the demand to come back. Now, when boomtown happens, John,
I was going to say boomtown is going to be the next restaurant, right? Like we all agreed that that's the next restaurant, right? Dan, you're going to franchise that one, boomtown.
Yeah, I think it's. I feel bullish about when the dust settles, the value proposition that Panera has of serving food that customers feel good about eating, with greater off-premise convenience and more digital e-commerce access will be even more relevant than it is today. Now, as we grow that franchise further, we will have to continue to innovate to excite our customers and give them reasons to come back. And that's where I think John talked about trust. And I think my trust in Felipe as a leader and my trust in Cuisine Solutions is right up there, because I see him as a partner. I see Cuisine Solutions as a partner. And their mindset always is, okay, you know, even as the business goes through difficulty, how can they understand the constraints of what we're trying to do and partner with us to solve the problems that we're trying to solve? And as we speak, we're currently engaged with some very exciting projects with Cuisine Solutions. So to me, sous vide is a subset of Cuisine Solution. To me, the bigger partnership is Cuisine Solution and the mindset of the leadership that Felipe provides.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. Having been out to their facility so many times and, you know, watching sort of the science involved with Crya and all the fabulous things they do there. I mean, I forget what they're doing just for the restaurant industry. You know, Jose Andres incorporated their products in World Central Kitchen when it comes to feeding the masses when they need it. So there's so many levels to me of what these shelf-stable products can do and how people, pardon me, can have access to them. One of the things I'm sort of curious from each of you, I don't know what the general public thinks about sous vide, or if they know what sous vide is, or if they think it's something in a bag that you boil. Do you think there needs to be an education tick for sous vide for the consumer, so that, Niren, if you're serving it there, or John, with your brilliant concept, is it important that the consumer understands the product and the premise? Dan?
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity. Most people don't know what it means. Most people don't know what sous vide means. And that's the opportunity, because if you believe that the best cooking comes from the French, which I do, it's about their cooking techniques. And this is one of them. This is one of them, like sauté, or like a lot of other techniques. This is a technique. And I think that the association needs to be at the highest level, where these concepts aren't just making food that's frozen. It's that they're putting out food that's at the highest level, and that it's easy to get it right 100% of the times. It's consistent. That's really what customers want. When they order something on the menu, they have a picture in their mind, what it's going to look like, what it's going to taste like. That's what they want. And so that's to me how this needs to be marketed, from the top down, not that it's a frozen product.
Well, consistency is so important. And John, with all the concepts you've done, and Niren, I mean, Panera, when people go to Panera, they expect that salad to be that salad every time. So I assume that, you know, the more people know about the products that are in what you're serving, the better, right? An educated consumer is going to be better, not worse.
Yes, I would think so. But you know what comes to mind is Bird's Eye. You know, when Bird's Eye created the frozen vegetable business, nobody had freezers. So he had a product that nobody could use, and it took quite a long time for him to get freezers in homes so he could sell his product. Well, people don't have sous vide water ovens in their homes, right? Restaurants' kitchens aren't built with sous vide ovens. So there's a process, water ovens. So there's a process to go through here. I would say this is one who owns a restaurant who is based in sous vide. I don't put it on my menu. The term concerns me. I don't want my customers to picture my kitchen as packaged products coming out of plastic bags and freezers. You know, none of that imagery serves a restaurant very well. I'm sure the team at Panera doesn't want to, present an image like that. That's not good food. So I have significant concerns. And, sous vide as a French process is very appealing. Michelin history, all that.
Right.
When you picture food in a plastic bag, the visual is not as appealing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way to go at this as a marketing person is we have to sell the premise of sous vide, the quality of it, the impact and the science of cooking, the flavor, all the things that matter to the consumer. And then the package and the offensiveness of a food and frozen in a all disappears because it's logic, not convenience, that creates that package. It's quality, not convenience, that created that package. It's good food that created that package. We got to create the premise around the package first. And I think, like Dan, I agree that needs to happen. But it needs to be done strategically. If we put the visual before the understanding of the product, we're going to fail.
Right, you'll lose them.
That's right.
Hey, John, I can see how you got 6 billion impressions from that room. I could watch you all day. I could watch.
but I bet you agree with what I'm saying, don't you?
I do. I think I also have reservations around. So here's the thing, what we've realized is for many years, Panera talked about the logical reasons why customers should buy Panera, because food as it should be, which is, food that's clean, it's free of this and free of that. I don't think customers make decisions like that about food that they eat. They actually just love the taste. Customers' choice is simple. Eating is an emotional experience. And I think it has to look good and it has to taste great. And then it matters less as to what you did with it or where it came from. Provenance is important. Where it came from is very important. But I think the cooking methodology and that, I think there's a limit to how much a consumer can absorb. So we are actually moving towards celebrating the taste. And the thing that matters most to a customer is the freshness and the quality and the taste. And the reason to be, of course, is, in the subtext of high quality ingredients, the way it's cooked and all that. But I don't think customers really care about it as long as we deliver on the taste. And I think with sous vide, we're able to deliver on the taste. We're able to deliver on the freshness. We're able to do it safely. That's what the customer really cares about. And I think sous vide is a difficult thing to really communicate, at least at the restaurant level, I would think.
Well, I will just say that years ago, Michel Richard, who unfortunately is no longer with us, he brought in his 72-hour short rib, which was created by Cuisine Solutions. And he opened it up in studio. And I mean, beef juice just went everywhere and he was slicing it up and throwing it at people. I mean, I got it the minute he opened it. It was gorgeous. It was delicious. And it's really how I became aware of sous vide cooking, was through Michel Richard. So I do understand what all of you are saying. I think it's just interesting because there is that foodie out there who wants to do sous vide at home. They're fascinated by the process because the consistency that can exist in each of your properties can also exist at home, which I think is really important. Dan?
Also, if I could just add a point to that, forgive me. In the independent restaurant world, the chefs don't exist to produce 72-hour short ribs. I mean, that is an entree, is not even a consideration.
Sure.
With sous vide, they can produce those types of products, and it brings a chef-level product into a kitchen that has no chef. That's a powerful element that drives, to me, sous vide logic.
Well then, gentlemen, I think this has been a very successful and engaging conversation. We're just up at an hour. If everybody could please just give your name, give your business, tell people where they can find you, maybe either via Instagram or on your web address, that would be great. John, let's start with you.
I just want to ditto, Niren. What makes sous vide great is Cuisine Solutions and Felipe. And the class and quality of that organization. They make sous vide even better than it really is. But my name is Jon Taffer, Jontaffer. You can find me at jontaffer.com and on television, actually right now, I think.
Excellent. Niren?
Yeah, Niren Chaudhary, CEO Panera Bread. You can get hold of me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And Dan?
Yeah, Dan Rowe, CEO of FranceSmart. You can get a hold of me on LinkedIn as well. Thanks for having us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and my panelists especially. This was a really interesting conversation. I love the idea that we are making solutions in this new world. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of all the activities that are happening today for International Sous Vide Day. I'm Nycci Nellis.
Thank you.